being really open-minded and having that learning mindset. And so whether you
Mm.
want to or not, either you're adapting or learning or else you're falling behind. You find somebody that you like or you admire their path or you just want to get advice from. So much of it is just ask. Let's talk about what we're seeing in the ecosystem, what trends, what data are we seeing, and if there's decisions we have to make or how do we unblock the teams, let's go have those discussions.
Welcome to the Smart Venture Podcast. We're here to bring you the latest and greatest from the Silicon Valley, where unicorns roam and innovation never sleeps. We've got top investors, superstar founders, and well-known tech executives lined up to share their secrets on building and investing in successful companies. Just a quick disclaimer, while we may sound like financial geniuses, but please don't mistake us for your friendly neighborhood financial advisors. So let's get started and dive into the wild world of tech entrepreneurship. Thank you again for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Grace. Great to be here.
From my perspective, you have worked at so many of my favorite brands, Google, definitely at the top. And then there's eBay, Williams-Sonoma, Fanatics. Like basically you work at all the top e-commerce brand or a consumer brand or like consumer tech brand. So I just like absolutely love to dig into learning from you about like your journey starting from, school in Berkeley. Tell us more about how you grew up and then how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. Well, first of all, again, thanks, Grace, for having me. I feel like I've been really fortunate career-wise to have worked for, great companies. I think more than anything, also worked on great teams and, worked for some great people. And so I think, just starting from, I guess, the career journey, what's funny is I've always done shopping or elements of shopping in e-commerce at various phases of my career. Starting at eBay, it was a really interesting time at eBay. And, I spent 10 years there. I like to say that I grew up at eBay. But, I think one of the most impactful moments I've had in my career was certainly, I think around the end of 2004 and 2005 timeframe where, it was a huge shift in e-commerce and consumer behavior. And what was happening was a lot of e-commerce up to that point were shoppers going directly to walled gardens, right? Going directly to eBay, going directly to Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And really in that 2004 2005 timeframe, search became where a lot of shopping journeys were started. So if you think about obviously Google, there's also Yahoo and Bing. And
Mm-hmm.
so that whole consumer shift was pretty significant. And what also that coincided with was a period of time where, eBay's growth was slowing down. And so what was really interesting was eBay's growth was slowing down, and I had an opportunity to lead a team where the company asked us to say, hey, look, while we're reimagining the consumer experience, we need to drive more traffic to eBay. And with this whole shift where a lot of shopping journeys were starting on search, it also coincided with paid search becoming a huge driver for growth marketing, internet marketing. And at eBay, we had such massive scale. We had like billions of keywords that we could buy. And what we found was that there was like there's no third party system that could handle that kind of volume. And I was fortunate enough to work with an amazing team where we thought, all right, well, look, we got to build this from scratch. And we started thinking about, paid search in a way where at the time was pretty forward thinking, where we start considering keywords almost, securities or equities in a mutual fund, and started bidding to that, started looking at some of the predictive value for the keywords there, and did that in a way where, we scaled to both Google AdWords, Yahoo Overture, I'm dating myself here, and Bing. And so it was just a fascinating time where you saw huge change in consumer behavior, and a time where the company really needed us to create new systems that would allow us to go, capture that demand when we were, again, in a time of slowing growth. So that was really a transformative time for me, when I just thought about, all right, well, thinking about how do you look at user trends, how do you adapt fast, and then, frankly, how do you roll up your sleeves to really grind to figure out like what that next big platform is going to drive. Because it was, again, a lot of these principles, is still pretty prevalent when you think about growth marketing, whether it's paid search, affiliate, or even display. And so that was a really fun time in my career at eBay. Started eBay, was almost there for 10 years, and then got a great opportunity to go to Williams-Sonoma, where I had a chance to lead the consumer experiences across their list of just awesome brands. And so you think about Pottery Barn, West Elm, Williams Sonoma, and it was a new experience for me where I had that responsibility, the data warehouse, the analytics, but then towards the back half of my time there, also had a chance to lead the digital marketing P&L. So I had not just the technology, but the P&L side of it. So that was pretty fun, where you could drive both. And so that was a great experience there. Really learned brand, and then the consumer experience. One of the things that was really important and relevant during that time is that, from an omni-channel retailer, as great as of a brand as Williams Sonoma is, there's actually a time where we had more e-commerce revenue than store revenue. So we eclipsed that, and they still have continued momentum there. Just a great user experience. And then most recently, in 2014, I went to Fanatics, and I look back at that as definitely like my dream job. I'm a huge sports fan, and
Mm.
so if you think about, I just saw a huge business opportunity, and a big opportunity to leverage technology to help drive the next S curve of growth for the company. And so what was cool about Fanatics was, I joined around like 2014, and that was actually right in the middle of the mobile shift, Grace. So everyone talks about, or I think lots of folks have talked about mobile shift in the past. And at the time, what was happening was you saw a lot of users and a lot of browse behavior happening on the, on smartphone. But what was different about Fanatics was that Fanatics is always over indexed to actual transactions on the smartphone. So
Mhm.
I don't remember the exact stats, but I remember early days it was I think Fanatics was like double the average number of or percent of conversions actually happening on a smartphone. If you think about second screen viewers, if you're watching I don't know if you're a sports fan, but a basketball or football game at your friend's house, at the end of, let's say, the Super Bowl, if you're excited and you want to buy the your team's championship T-shirt, you want to do it on your on your smartphone in real time. And so that was a huge shift that led to huge platform efforts and investments in the company there. So it was really pretty fun time. And we also built out quite a few new fulfillment centers. You think about the end-to-end consumer experience, which was great. And then that led me ultimately to come to Google, which I think brings all that experience together, where I look back fondly at all these roles, and I think about eBay being really like top of the funnel demand generation, and then Williams Sonoma was a little further down in the consumer journey, the user experience across just awesome brands, and then Fanatics took that further with the mobile shift, as well as with end-to-end fulfillment and loyalty. And then at Google, we have this opportunity with just massive scale, right? We have over 1 billion shopping sessions a day, to take some of those learnings and apply them to merchants of all sizes to help them get discovered on Google and really be the best place for them to grow, connect directly with their customers, and grow their business.
Totally. I feel like you have such a rich experience in all kind of different things around commerce. And from what you have shared, like I just feel like I definitely learned a lot about like your different overall like general sense of lessons from like different places. And I'm curious, since you have worked at all these like iconic brands, how do you kind of like plan out your career? A lot of listeners are like people who are younger and then like with this experience about a lot of ambition. I'm curious, like how should they kind of like shape their career like you, right? Who are kind of like your mentors or like personal board of advisors, and what are like some skills that you kind of like acquired during your time in these different companies?
Yeah. Yeah, Grace, I think I've just, like I said, I've been super lucky. I've been really fortunate to have worked with great people. Frankly, as I look at the different places I've been, followed some great people that have led me to some of these different companies. But I think that, a couple things that have really, I think, rung true for me as far as just thinking about career development. And I talk to lots of, whether it's interns, my oldest daughter, who
Mhm.
will be a junior in college, and she's studying computer science, and so I think she'll probably be going to tech, although she doesn't really listen to dad that much. But nevertheless, I think probably the most important skill I always think through that's helped me is just being really open-minded and having that learning mindset. And I know it sounds cliche, but I love this Charlie Munger quote that talks about learning is changing behavior. And if there's one thing in retail and my whole career I've spent in shopping that's constant is that change is constant. And so whether you
Mm,
want to or not, either you're adapting or learning or else you're falling behind. And so I've
mm,
always pursued roles where, I've had an opportunity to go deeper and just learn more. And, if I go through my own career journey, again, it's funny because I think about, look, I'm a software guy at heart. So I've built software around all these different phases of the consumer experience. And it just happens to map pretty well to, what a shopping journey looks like. And so I think again, eBay was top of the funnel demand gen. Williams Sonoma and Fanatics were more consumer focused. I think again at Williams Sonoma I really focused on, it was great to learn a brand, and then you have just really well converting sites that have high AOVs and great brand recognition. So that was a really great learning there. And then I think Fanatics was really powerful as far as fans love their teams and their sports. And so that's how I've always just kind of prioritized the roles I've played. I've been fortunate to have, which is really about learning. And then I think about how that's related to my personal board of directors. And I think that I go back to some of the great people that I've had the fortune of learning from. And so I think about like John Coral, who was my longtime manager at eBay. He's now the CEO of The Real. And
mm,
if you think about your personal advisors, I recommend you have, some contrarian who's always going to push back on you if you have some
mm,
ideas and give you the opposite point of view, and then somebody who thinks really big, and Coral's that guy for me. So he's one there. Another one I think about is Bill Reddy. So
mm,
Bill actually brought me to Google, and he now leads Pinterest. He's the CEO of Pinterest, and so Bill's just this awesome like platforms, product, ecosystem thinker.
mhm,
And I've always admired his ability to, have built companies that have gone like 0 to 1, like Venmo, and then also scaled companies like really big publicly traded companies in his role, like either PayPal or
mm.
what he's doing now at Pinterest. And so those are, a couple, folks I think about who are huge influences on my career or continue to be on my board of advisors. But I think, Grace, any board of advisors is incomplete without talking about family. And so I would say that the single biggest influence in my career is definitely my dad. And
Mm,
so my dad he was a retired computer science professor. He was chairman of computer science at Chico State for over 30 years, where I grew up. And he's also immigrated from the Philippines. I think about probably the most impactful discussion I've ever had with anybody in my career was with him. It was during my junior year of high school. And I was trying to piece all these pieces together. My dad got his PhD at Texas A&M in the mid 60s. And so I asked him, I said, Dad, why did you always work at these restaurants? I'm like, shouldn't you have got like a better paying job at a lab? And, knowing that he was putting himself through school. And the thing he told me very casually is, well, there's two things that working at restaurants for me did. Number one is, he got whatever his hourly wage was, but the second thing was that he knew he was always going to get fed. And so that
mm,
was like, he knew that he didn't have to worry about his next meal. And, for me as a junior in high school, hearing that really hit hard in a good way. And I just thought and reflected, okay, so whatever issues I think I had across
mm,
my, as a junior in high school, socially or at school or whatnot, was pretty insignificant compared to what he had to endure to come here, work hard, et cetera. And so I think a lot of the values as far as he's just an optimist. It was never like, all right, hard problem, we'll go figure it out. And I think I certainly have taken a lot from that. And so that's the biggest. He's certainly the biggest influence in my career. And then lastly, I'd say that, probably the most important member of my board of advisors is my wife, Molly. So there's no, we've been married for 23 years. And so there's no big decision that I've made in my career that we haven't made as a team. And the funny thing, Grace, is, you hear about as you grow your career, who you're supposed to get feedback from and who you're not supposed to get feedback from. One of the call outs is, hey, never get feedback from your significant other because they can overstate your abilities, et cetera. I'll tell you that my wife is definitely not in that camp. She is a great practitioner of radical candor. And so I think she's
mm,
always, keeping me honest as far as ways to think about roles and opportunities. But again, I think I just go back to it's I've been really fortunate to have worked with so many great people, but I do think it just all comes back to just really prioritizing just openness to learn. And that's why, for example, I read a lot, and trying to talk to lots of different our users, whether they're merchants, ecosystem partners, just to make sure that I'm really staying in touch with what's going on within shopping.
Wow. Oh my God. I feel like I was just like still thinking about like your personal board of advisors. Like you said so well, there's two camp. There's like the family camp, which is your dad and wife, and then there's like some mentors from like your work slash like career journey. And I'm just curious, like beside, the family side of things, like I feel like finding or like working with these mentors, I'm curious. Number one is when you were like starting your career, how do you pick these people to work for? And you must have something that like they kind of recognize from you. So like they want to keep mentoring you. How do you strengthen this relationship after, let's say, you join a job at a company?
Yeah, it's a great question, Grace. I think there's a couple things to think about. I think, look, the first thing is, if you whatever job you're in, just do it really well. It
Mhm,
sounds, and I think that that's where, if you're asked to do a job, or you're in a certain role,
mhm,
I think if you just do it really well and get noticed, I think that folks who you admire are going to be much more willing to, to spend time with you, to mentor you.
mm,
And I look back at just different opportunities that I've had, and folks that I've asked for advice, like on my advisory board, just mentors in general. And so I think again, first things first is you do a great job in what you're
mhm,
doing, and then I think the second thing is just ask. And
mhm,
what's funny is I used to do this intern book club at Fanatics,
mhm,
my last company, where we'd come in and we'd read a book. And well, actually, a lot of them were really smart, so they wouldn't read the book and they
mhm,
would just watch the YouTube review of it, so they could save time. So just outsmart the some of the young folks could outsmart that. But a lot
mhm,
of the advice we talk about, I love this quote: "You miss every shot you don't take,"
mhm,
because if you find somebody that you like, or you admire their path, or you just want to get advice from, so much of it is just ask. Hey,
mhm.
could you advise me on X or Y? And you'd be surprised, like a lot of folks. I mean, most people I've found. I mean, frankly, like I've never actually been told like, no, sorry, man, I don't have time for you. I mean, maybe it's, well, I don't have time this week or next week, but we can chat later. But I think those are the two things really to think about.
Totally. I like that, don't overthink it. Number one, do a good job at like your existing job. And then like number two is just like to ask to kind of like get the opportunity that you have to just take the shot instead of waiting for something to happen to you. I really love the lessons. And I'm curious, like, what do you identify as your unfair advantage? And how do you kind of like play it at your career journey?
I think my unfair advantage is knowing that I don't have an unfair advantage. And what I mean by that is, I talked about like the importance of learning, and how I'm always, reading and asking questions, and getting feedback. And I think that's where at least for me, it's really just helped me, I think, navigate. Look, I'm trying to figure out how long I've worked. I've been working for a long time, but I've spent over 20 years in shopping and e-commerce. And I think that just being able to adjust to all those trends, again, you just have to be willing to learn, and frankly, questioning, something that may have worked during, like, maybe pre-COVID doesn't work post-COVID, for example, just based on consumer journeys, what businesses are trying to do. And so I think that's where for me, I always have, there's always like a book I'm reading for, just trying to improve, how I'm being better, just to be better at my job. And then I'm always reading like more of a fun book for, just to try to balance that out. But I think really it's this, that the learning mindset is I think the most important thing, because that's where it's a really good foundation for, because I think that if people see that you're willing to learn, and take feedback and different perspectives, they're going to be more willing to obviously either want to work with you, partner with you. And I think especially at a company like Google, it's so critical, because we have such massive scale. We have over 1 billion shopping sessions a day. And then within my shopping world, it's partnering closely with the search team, with ads and YouTube. And that's really where I think about, and then really trying to learn about, hey, what are some of the things that are really important to my partners there. And then that's where I feel like we have really the maximum impact for our users based on the different platforms that we build.
Totally. I like what you said about learning is something that like it's kind of not your unfair advantage, but it is kind of your unfair advantage to like constantly knowing that like you need to adapt into different changes. And like speaking of like your like learning journey, like I feel you have been at the inflection point of every company that you kind of joined. I'm just out of curiosity. I'm aware of like Fanatics is essentially like a sports brand that are like selling all these kind of like different merchandise, and there's so many different merchandise brands that are like sports related. Like, why do you think Fanatics kind of went in this category before we jump into the Google whole thing?
The Fanatics vision of being the best fan brand in the world was a big vision, similar to like the vision that we have at Google, which is, to be the best place for merchants to connect directly with consumers
Mhm.
and to be essential in shopping journey. So I think number one, the Fanatics vision was big. And I think what it comes down to just the execution of bringing on great people that had really similar values. Again, when I joined in 2014, there was a bunch of new folks who were brought on, and including my manager at the time, Doug Mack, who just announced his retirement. Congrats, Doug! What a run! And I think that having those shared values to execute on, frankly, what was a huge opportunity where fans are just going back to what we always talk about at Google is just listen to the user, and that was something where fans were clearly excited about their team, licensed sports merchandise, and then just building out a platform that could scale. And that was I think they've done a really good job of continuing to build out the assortment and expanding into other categories too.
Totally. I'm curious. You mentioned a really good point, which is like listening to the user, right? When you just joined Google 3 years ago, how do you start your job there? From like Fanatics, which is a sports related like brand company, and like to Google, which is the biggest search engine in the world and like the biggest basically everything company. So out of curiosity, like how do you quickly find the your responsibilities, and like how do you quickly map out like what you need to do as a leader there?
Yeah. Yeah, Grace, I think just to set some context, when I joined Google, it was August of 2020. It was right in the middle of COVID. I mean, little things
Mhm.
like I joined and the only person on my team I had met in person was Bill.
Mhm.
So it was a really critical time where there was so much important COVID related work going on across all of Google. And if you think back to the vision that we have, which was, just really to build out this big shopping ecosystem, be the best place again for consumers to find what they're looking for to be a central part of their shopping journeys. And so knowing all of this, we're in the midst of this global crisis. I think number one, the mindset I had was like, I just wanted to come in and learn. And just because there's so much going on, and that was really the first thing. And then as I was learning, the thing I wanted to try to do is just apply some of the old learnings that I've heard, frankly, of 20 years being in shopping as a merchant who's worked in a marketplace setting at eBay, worked at a great omni-channel brand like at Williams Sonoma, and then working at a fast-growing direct-to-consumer brand like Fanatics, and then just bringing that merchant mindset and also the mindset of a large advertiser into the work that we were doing at Google. And so in 2020 also it coincided with our rollout of free listings. And so what that was again, it was our non-ads based shopping listings that we had introduced to the platform. Really the thinking there was that anybody who has anything to sell globally should be able to do that for free on Google.
Mm.
So that was really a big strategic shift, because a lot of the thinking there persists today, right? Which is because we're not a marketplace, like an eBay, and we're not a retailer like either Fanatics or Williams Sonoma, our goal is again to be that ecosystem that connects merchants directly to their, with their customers. And so right out of the bat, as we were thinking through, some of the things to build out, with some of the merchant experience I had, I think the first thing was, really wanted to emphasize the importance of promotions and deals, because if you put the mindset or the merchant hat on, if you think about what are the things that merchants care about, what was the biggest expense? Look, it's inventory. So based on that inventory, how can you help them, with great deals, either sell through that or highlight those deals and get those deals closer to customers if those deals are either on their site, in their physical store. So we put a lot of emphasis on ensuring that merchandise promotions and deals were able to be provided by the merchant and then all the way up through to be seen by consumers. So that was a really big piece of the strategy there right when I joined. The other thing was just trying to make sure that we could provide the right actionable insights to merchants, for free. And this just goes back to that shift that we had moving from free listings, from a paid product to now a free product. Obviously, our paid product is still there and continues to be very successful. But on the insights piece, again, I just go back to what was happening holiday 2020. So it was not just COVID. Well, COVID had a couple impacts. Obviously, it was huge shift from a lot of the lockdowns. Online commerce just grew significantly. If you think about just US big picture, before COVID, about 10% of retail was done online. After COVID, that number doubled, right? And it's still around 20% today, which is huge change in consumer behavior. But the other thing that happened in that timeline, specifically the holiday for 2020 and 2021, is that we had major supply chain challenges. And so because of those supply chain challenges, we wanted to provide merchants with more tools so they can help manage their assortments better. So we rolled out a couple new insights reports, both the bestseller reports and competitive visibility reports, that gave merchants the ability to see, what else was selling in their vertical. And so if you think about this, Grace, let's say that, I'm a merchant, maybe I sell shoes. And if for some reason my top selling shoe, I couldn't get it back in stock in time for Black Friday or Cyber Monday, I could see that, hey, other products in that category, maybe they're socks, or since you and I are wearing the same black t-shirts or whatnot, you can see that there is consumer demand for that. So then maybe those merchants then would then say, okay, hey, I can then go make a big purchase, and knowing that there's demand for those products there. So those are just a couple of things that when I came to Google, we focused on, which was this combination of, for me, really learning everything that was going on in the company at the time. It was a really critical time. And then also putting my merchants and retailer hat on from the experience I had in trying to apply that in a Google context.
Wow. I feel like there's so many interesting like kind of things that you guys have launched during this time. Especially, I feel like there were a lot of challenges like joining during the pandemic because there's like a giant shift of, how people's like shopping behavior or like or people's like selling behavior online. And I'm curious, like when it comes to thinking about like a core like goals for like how do you set goals for you and your team, because I feel this may be like a more general like meta sense, like basically a lot of people like myself, like I'm like a small business founder, so I'm curious like how do you quickly recognize what you need to do to kind of grow your business, and like how do you kind of like quickly set up like a KPI or a benchmark for like your team to see if something that like you instantly implemented will work or not?
Yeah, it's a great question, Grace. I think, this balance of, call it like long term and short term. I think that to get to the short term, you got to start with a vision. And this is something that within my team we're constantly talking about, which is again just the broader vision. I've said it a couple of times. I'll just say it again, which is the vision that we have at Shopping at Google, is to be essential. It's to be an essential part of consumer journeys and to be the best place for merchants to really connect directly with their customers and grow a business. And that's a huge vision. Again, it's very much in alignment with our company's mission to, organize the world's information and make it usable and accessible to everybody. And it's a very compelling mission because it's one that's never going to be done. So I think you start there, and then I think you go from there and start thinking about like core principles where for example, in on my team, just what are the things that merchants need to continue to have success to really reach that vision? And there's a few principles, Grace, that we often talk about. So we talk about ease, right? On the ease side, how do you make it as easy as possible for merchants and advertisers to come onto the platform, to come onto Google, to make their inventory of and products available to be shown across, again, the billion shopping sessions that we have today. So that's something that we're constantly looking at. The second thing is value. So how do you drive more merchant value in the form of well-qualified traffic, clicks, conversions, impressions, and then even value. I mentioned some of the actionable insights that we rolled out when I first joined in 2020 and continue to do. And then the last principle is trust. We think about, how do we get, merchants to come onto the platform who are high trust, who then create, again, a high trust environment, shopping environment for the consumers who come on to Google across all different surfaces. And you start with a vision, some principles, and then you get into some of the OKRs, where of course we have annual OKRs that are much more granular, that come back into the different work streams that we have. And and obviously we have checkpoints, monthly, quarterly goals. And so I think that's really how like we've structured a lot of the work that we do. And I think the key thing is for the more short-term pieces is really just to try to have fast feedback loops. So one of the things that we try to do is, we have these twice weekly product forums, and we go, we try to make them as lightweight as possible. I always tell the teams, like, there's no deck needed. If you want to talk through a doc, et cetera, but let's talk about what we're seeing in the ecosystem, what trends, what data are we seeing, and if there's decisions we have to make, or how do we unblock the teams, let's go have those discussions. For example, we had a really good session last week where we're testing this new streamlined checkout experience where, shoppers who come to Google who have the option to buy can go directly from a listing on Google deep into the checkout flow on the merchant's website. And so we've got really great feedback on this simplified checkout flow. And so I'm pushing the team like, all right, this is awesome. Like, how do we get this out more? How do we expand this out to more merchants? And, and we're hoping to bring this to all merchants soon. These are some of the things where, again, you go back to, I like to work backwards from, again, the big picture vision, principles, and then OKRs. But I think, Grace, what it comes down to is on the short-term pieces, it's really about the grind. I think there's really no substitute for, look, what experiment is working, even if it's just, 5 or 10 bips of upside, basis points of upside. You think about that at scale, especially at Google scale, you get a bunch of those going, and then you start seeing like massive impact. But I think there's definitely you stay really strong to the vision and have high conviction, but then you have flexibility to how you actually get and achieve that vision, which are based on some of those shorter term, OKRs that, again, annual OKRs, but split them out into, smaller time dimensions, quarterly, monthly, and then go from there.
Totally. I feel like I really what you said about, starting with a mission, and then there's the principle, which is like the easy, value, and trust. And then like you guys break it down to like different OKRs for your team. In terms of, setting up these, I would say, I guess like the mission is like very clear. And then like in terms of setting up like the principle and OKRs, do you use like competitors as an example? Like I don't really know if, because Google in the past, like maybe or I think one day you were mentioning about this in a different interview, like Google is indifferent where the shopping journey ends. So I don't know if it's changed like from back then to now. What do you envision as like Google's role in this like shopping journey consumer is doing every day, and then how is that aligned with Google's general like big picture earnings, right? Every company have to earn like money to survive in general. So in terms of this such a successful brand as Google, where do you guys see yourself in this, I guess, shopping ecosystem, and how do you implement that into your OKRs or like some like things that you need to do?
Look, when you think about, you asked the question about how we're agnostic to where the shopping journey, and I want to talk about that because it really speaks to our laser focus on this broader ecosystem strategy that we've had since I've been at Google over the past 3 years. And so, really, if you think about our role in shopping, and let me first start with, it really just comes back to the user, and why are we, for example, agnostic to where the shopping journey ends. And what we found again is in our quest to be our vision to be an essential part of shopping journeys for consumers. And then look, we want to help merchants of all sizes, be successful, connect directly with those consumers. I think the key piece here is we want to facilitate that connection, and we don't want to get in the way, meaning that the as we facilitate this connection, when merchants list their products on Google, when a consumer finds a product they like, they click on it, they go to the merchant site, let's say they buy, guess what? The merchant owns that relationship. We don't get in the way. And so that really speaks to the strength of what we're building out from an ecosystem perspective. The other thing I think through, and just going back to, just to answer your question directly, which is, our approach hasn't changed. And really what we've found again is just, really keeping our user focus, is that, look, consumers, when they find something they like on Google, more often than not, they want to go to the merchant site to either really, if they want to complete the transaction, that's where they want to do it, which is why, again, we're agnostic to where the transaction takes place, because we want to follow the user. And so that's one piece. And I think that if you think about some of the trends that we see, of course, I have to mention AI. I think the good news is Google has been an AI first company since 2016. And so the way we view this is that really AI is here to help everyone, in terms of whether it's like every business, every student, every shopper, and really help them do tasks in a better way, really to help them to reach their potential. And for example, we just rolled out a product within my team called Google Product Studio, which leverages generative AI to help merchants create beautiful imagery and do it for free, and imagery where they may not have had the resources to do. So for example, I go back to that shoe analogy. If I'm trying to sell shoes, if I wanted to, let's say, sell a pair of Air Jordan 1 lows, sorry, my favorite pair of shoes, but then do so with a background of a tropical background with a really relaxed vibe, whatever that means. you, I'm not a great marketer guy. So anyways, you could type in the prompt, and then it will actually generate those images. But if you think about, again, our point of view as far as leveraging AI, it's something that it's been a core part of Google's products, again, for many years, since 2016. And we want to continue to enable that, to again deliver great shopping experiences for our users, for our consumers, and then help merchants connect with their customers.
I really like that, like, you guys still like have a great mission to like help that, like basically helping like merchant connecting with customer, and then you guys are launching like AI based tools to achieve that. I'm just out of curiosity, what are like the business angle that like shopping would play in the entire Google ecosystem? Because Google is like extremely successful in everything they do. Like I really feel like, online shopping, like sometimes like, when it comes to online shopping, some people think of Amazon. Google has been like working on Google Shopping since, the 2000s. Now it seems like there's like many generation past. Like how is it like different from like where you guys have started, and like to, nowadays, what are some changes that happens throughout like building up this kind of like department under the Google umbrella?
Just going back to the mission, we want to be able to help really retailers of all sizes, grow and connect directly with consumers. I think you could agree that I don't think anybody wants to be in a world where there's just one place to shop. We want to be able to help, again, merchants of all sizes be seen and connect directly with with consumers. I go back to when we went with free listings, and that changed in 2020 and moved to this ecosystem approach. The thinking was that, again, if any retailer, any merchant has anything to sell, they should be able to do so for free. We see ourselves in growing this ecosystem. And if you think about what Google does really well, our core mission is, and what we do best is organizing the world's information, regardless of what content types are, right? It could be text, it could be ads, images, video, and just being able to do that and making it usable to consumers. And this is where, again, a lot of the AI powered platforms that we have, and specifically if we think about our shopping graph. And so I've talked about this in the past, but just as a reminder, the shopping graph is our AI powered platform that takes
Mhm.
products, listings, attributes, ship dates, returns information, you name it, inventory availability across 35 billion offers globally, and shows them to consumers across all the different Google services to the tune of a billion shopping sessions a day. It's huge scale. And so it also, I mean, as far as what's relevant to users, Grace, you start thinking about, hey, well, I want to know if the inventory is fresh, is the price accurate. We do within our shopping graph over 1.8 billion updates per hour. And so it's something that really provides the foundation of everything we do from from an ecosystem perspective. And so I think it's really, if you go back to just trying to be helpful for to users, and you've started to see that, whether it's shopping through Google Lens, which is just driving more visual search. Maybe you've seen probably like package tracking on Gmail, or even when you open up Chrome, some of the saved carts there. These are just some of the ways in which we're trying to be helpful and become an essential part of shopping for consumers across all the different products we have.
Totally. I saw that you guys have partnered with like many successful like e-com platforms such as like Shopify, Square, WooCommerce, GoDaddy, literally like everything that's kind of like powering these small shops. Like, how do you spend your day? Because you also launch like the AI backed product. There's, a lot of partnerships going on. How do you kind of like structure your day as the VP of Google? And basically, yeah, I'm just curious, like, what is your a day in your life look like?
Yeah, I think it's pretty boring. I'm kidding. I don't think it's boring. But no. Look, I think starting with some of the ecosystem partners and merchants, I think I go back to like our user focus, such a big part of the growth of our ecosystem. And we always talk about like meeting merchants where they are, meeting users and consumers where they are. Well, a lot of these merchants have grown really well and significantly on these ecosystem partners, through our ecosystem partners like Shopify, WooCommerce, just to name a couple of them. And so I do spend a good amount of time with them, because obviously we have shared goals that we want to do. We obviously want to make sure that merchants on those platforms are having success on Google as they're driving user value. So that's a big part of my day. I'm also spend a lot of time with individual merchants. It's just always good to, again, everything we're building, with that user focus, you got to hear from them. And so we do this session, Grace, we call Meet the Merchant. And we do it pretty regularly, where I have a member of my staff interview a merchant, and who gives us great feedback. They always talk about the things that are working, and they're very direct on the things that aren't working. So those are
Mhm,
just great opportunities there.
mhm.
And I just go back to the execution side of the vision, the principles, and then some of the OKRs. I spend a good amount of time in just product and platform reviews, and really just going through data to make sure that we understand, hey, what are new insights that we can leverage to either maybe change our product roadmap a little bit to make sure that we're driving the most value for merchants and then advertisers. And then I think lastly, I spent a lot of time with my team. I think we started just talking about some of the like good fortune I've had to work for, and some great leaders and managers, and the importance of team and just having a cohesive culture there. So I spent a lot of time with my team, just trying to understand the pulse of how folks are doing, and just trying to make sure that I'm giving good feedback to my leads. I think we've built a really good culture, a great culture within the team that I'm lucky to be a part of, the merchant shopping team within Google. And so spend a lot of time investing in that.
Totally. I think investing in people is definitely the most important investment, as like they are going to be executing based on, the meeting the merchants or like ecosystem partnerships, or, studying like the insights like from the data. And curious, like in terms of having like selecting people on your team, what are like the quality that you look for when you are hiring?
There's an element of domain expertise that obviously we're looking for, and we screen for that. I think for me, and specifically, like what I like to look for, especially for the more senior folks, is really some of the things around like, again, aligning cultural values. I think one of the things I talk about, I mentioned I'm a big sports fan, but I think one of the key pieces I always talk to the teams is, look, ideally, we want to get to the point where we need to name our values, but then culturally, we need to get to the point where we're throwing no look passes to each other. And I will spend just a couple of minutes just talking about this analogy that I feel very strongly about, which is, look, in sports, and you can talk about it in basketball or soccer, or European football, however you want to say it. Typically, a no look pass is, let's say in basketball, if we're Bears, so let's use the Warriors for example. Steph Curry throws a no look pass to Klay Thompson. He's wide open for a three, usually hits it, usually scores. And so I really think that metaphor is absolutely critical to what we're building from a team. And I always talk about, hey, how do you drive sustainable growth? Well, a lot of it is you got to work with a team where, again, going back to that metaphor, a no look pass means that you have full trust in your teammate. You didn't talk to them that they're going to be out in the wing, when he threw the pass. You just expected they were going to be there. And
Mhm.
then typically the recipient of that no look pass, the expectation is you deliver. So there's a reliability piece of it too, where, hey, you trust that your teammate is going to be able to, finish or score in that case. But again, the metaphor there is actually really good for how it works within business or shopping, which is when you have a team that's able to have really great cohesion, whether it's great trust, you know, open, honest feedback. I love this term, that clear is kind. And so that's something in these fast feedback cycles. Then these no look passes are really a metaphor for, hey, that will drive innovation that will, in a good way, surprise the industry, right? Just because you're able to, get to market more quickly, work together, more quickly. So it's something that that I look for. I mean, often you talk about like the importance of trust and psychological safety, which obviously I'm a huge believer in. A lot of times those are outcomes of some inputs around, like, just expectations around, look, we're going to have open, honest, direct feedback. We're going to have fast feedback cycles. We care about velocity. We care about the user. So all those things, I think, really roll up into the types of, I think, hiring decisions, and frankly, like the team that you want to build. And the way my team is structured is I've got an experiences and applications team. I have a platforms and infrastructure team and a trust team, and all those functions roll up, to me, and to support the many different platforms that we leverage, to support shopping across all of Google.
I really love like your sports metaphor as well as like, align with the culture, the value, and then like building on full trust and like having direct feedback to each other. Nowadays, like a lot of big platforms are like starting getting into the e-commerce or like commerce scene. So for example, TikTok or, Amazon live shopping, or back in time there was like Instagram live shopping. What do you envision as like the future of shopping? And then how would Google, help people to shop down the line?
Yeah, that's a great question, Grace. A couple of thoughts. I think one is that I do think that the future really is going to look for these more immersive AI powered technologies, whether it's product studio that I just talked about, or even some of the virtual try-on technology that we've recently rolled out. And I do think that those use cases powered by AI have the potential to really just simplify and really drive delight in the online shopping experience. And love what social media has done in terms of really this idea of making everybody, a content creator. And so
Mhm.
certainly within the ecosystem, there's a great place for, whether it's like social platforms, marketplaces, retailers, to really come together to help, frankly, help shoppers find what they're looking for, depending on what part of the journey they're looking at. So I think in that context, I go back to, Google's broader mission, just to really to organize the world's information, regardless of the content type, right? So there's, again, it could be video, social media, text, images, et cetera. And that's really, more broadly what we're looking to do. The last thing I'd say is that I definitely think there's in the future, we're going to start seeing these experiences just become much more streamlined between like online, like in person and local shopping.
Mm.
And those experiences will continue to get, much more fluid and seamless. I'll give you an example of this last winter where I like to snowboard. When I bought my Burton Hometown Hero snowboards, I was on the slopes of North Star with my family. My son and I snowboard, my girls, my two daughters, and my wife ski. I have to say, patience is not a widely shared virtue in the Madrigal household. So my girls are always like, "Hey, Dad, Luke, why don't you guys take forever to strap in before we can all go down the mountain together?" And in that during one of those, before one of the runs, I actually found a snowboard I liked. I just took a quick picture of it. And then I used Google Lens to just find, first of all, like what was the brand, what was the actual snowboard. And then luckily identified the snowboard. And it was actually being sold at the Burton shop at North Star where we were staying. And
Mhm.
so I ended up buying it, and I bought it with the step-on boots and bindings. And so my girls have no more reason to give dad upward feedback that he's too slow to get on the mountain. But I think that's an example there, Grace. I just go back to, a lot of times Google has the ability to really bridge the online and local experiences. And I just see those just becoming more and more seamless. And frankly, you see this with some of the younger shoppers. That's their expectation, right? That it's a seamless journey. And so that's where we need to, I think, shopping is going to continue to go to.
Totally. I totally agree on people are getting more less patient with like when things arrive, people want to get something in a store right away. But finding where to get is like extremely important. And okay, so we have a 1 minute fire round. I don't know if you have enough time.
Yeah,
Uh,
let's do it.
okay, perfect. So first question is what's your favorite book?
Oh, Wooden on leadership. So
Uh
John Wooden is the famous UCLA basketball coach,
mhm.
although I prefer Cal over UCLA. But anyways,
We're going sports all the way today. So who would you invite to your dinner party?
so I would choose people at the top of their game. So I would go with Taylor Swift,
What?
Marshawn Lynch. Yeah, Taylor Swift, Marshawn Lynch, the original Beast Mode, and then Warren Buffett.
Wow. Okay. So that's a really interesting party. Who made the biggest impact in your life?
Whew. I'd say I'm going to go with a compound answer here. It's probably my dad and my wife.
Awesome. Where can we find you outside of work?
In Lake Tahoe with my family, snowboarding. I'd be snowboarding, and then my girls would be skiing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt, for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Grace. Really enjoyed the chat.
Thanks for tuning into Smart Venture Podcast. If you learned something from the episode or even just mildly tolerated me, please subscribe and leave a 5-star rating. I promise I will keep bringing you more successful, insightful interviews and insider tips about startups. Remember, sharing is caring. So tell your friends to listen too, or enemies, I won't judge. Until next time, keep venturing smartly.